fabled heat, where magic meets desire. Subscribe to ignite the fantasy.
The dashboard clock glowed a malevolent 3:17 a.m. Outside, the swirling nebula looked like spilled raspberry jam on an endless black tablecloth. I rubbed my eyes, the grit sandpaper against exhaustion. 20 souls, 20 goddamn souls short. Hera was going to have my hide and probably reassign me to hauling sanitation on the Glarbian garbage run. Focus, Rhea, I muttered to myself. My rig, the Stardust drifter, hummed beneath me, a well-oiled, dimension-hopping beast. I patted the worn leather of the steering wheel, a gesture born of habit and a healthy dose of desperation. The comm panel crackled. Rhea, darling, it's me. Hera's voice dripped with honey, but I knew the sting that lay beneath. Morning, goddess, I managed, trying to keep the whine out of my tone. Morning, oh Rhea, it's nearly the end of your shift, and I must remind you of the slight discrepancy in your quota. I'm working on it, Hera. Worlds are unusually resistant this cycle. Lot of bad mojo out there. Excuses, Rhea, excuses. Perhaps you need a little incentive. I braced myself. Hera's incentives usually involved celestial bureaucracy and paperwork that could age a god. What did you have in mind? There's a surge of candidates on Earth, specifically a small town in Oregon. High concentration of potential heroines, but the portal is unstable. It requires delicate handling. My stomach dropped. Unstable portals meant temporal distortions, gravity anomalies, and the occasional rogue tentacle monster. Delicate handling, that sounds like a job for someone with a bit more experience. I hope the self-deprecation worked. Hera chuckled. Nonsense, you're perfectly capable. Besides, one of these candidates is unique. She's destined for greatness, and compatible. Compatible, that word sent a shiver down my spine. Hera was notorious for playing matchmaker, usually with disastrous results. I had no interest in fated mates. All I wanted was to finish my quota, avoid the garbage run, and maybe get a decent night's sleep for once. Just find her, Rhea, transport her. The rest will follow. The comm clicked off, leaving me alone with my impending doom and the Raspberry Nebula. Oregon, great, land of pine trees, overpriced coffee, and now, potentially my soulmate. I punched in the coordinates and the drifter shuddered, preparing to pierce the veil between dimensions. The transition was always disorienting. One moment, swirling starlight, the next, the damp, earthy smell of pine and rain. I materialized in a deserted parking lot on the outskirts of the town, which predictably was called Havenwood. I checked the drifter's scanners. A veritable constellation of potential heroines shimmered on the screen, all clustered around one location, a dive bar called the Redwood Knot. Fantastic, my savior was probably drowning her sorrows in cheap whiskey and karaoke. I sighed, grabbed my worn leather jacket, and stepped out into the Oregon night. The Redwood Knot reeked of stale beer and desperation. The karaoke singer was butchering a Celine Dion classic, and the crowd was a motley mix of lumberjacks, bikers, and people who looked like they'd lost their way on a camping trip. I scanned the room, searching for the unique signal Hera had mentioned, and then I saw her. She was sitting at the far end of the bar, bathed in the dim glow of a flickering neon sign. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy braid, revealing high cheekbones and a jawline sharp enough to cut glass. Her eyes, the color of melted chocolate, were fixed on the bottom of her glass. Even in this dive, she radiated an aura of quiet power, and something else, something that resonated deep within me, a primal hum of recognition. Fated mates, Hera, you son of a bitch. I walked towards her, my boots sticking slightly to the beer-soaked floor. As I got closer, I noticed the small, intricate tattoos that snaked around her wrists, stylized ravens in flight. Rough night, I asked, my voice rough around the edges. She looked up, her gaze piercing. Depends, are you a cop? Definitely not, I slid onto the stool next to her. Just a concerned citizen. She snorted, right, concerned about my potential for public intoxication. Concerned about your potential in general, I offered a small smile. I'm Rhea. Leah, she replied, her voice low and husky. Leah, nice to meet you. The connection was undeniable. A current crackled between us, making the hairs on my arms stand on end. We sat in silence for a moment, the Celine Dion massacre finally ending. Then Leah spoke, her gaze still fixed on her empty glass. I'm leaving. Leaving? Where are you going? Doesn't matter, anywhere but here. This town, this life, it's suffocating me. Bingo, I know a place, I said, my heart pounding. A place where you can be more, do more. She looked at me skeptically. And what's the catch? No catch, just a ride to somewhere different. She hesitated, her brow furrowed. I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. Different how? Different as in another dimension, different, I said, then braced myself, but Leah just blinked. Huh, she said, then drained the last of her drink. Honestly, that's less crazy than my average Tuesday. I offered her my hand. Trust me, Leah, you have no idea. She looked at my hand, then up at me. A spark of something flickered in her chocolate eyes. She took my hand, her grip firm and calloused. Okay, Rhea, let's go. We walked out of the redwood knot, the damp Oregon air feeling suddenly charged with possibility. As we reached the drifter, parked in the deserted lot, Leah stopped. What is that thing? She asked, staring up at the hulking chrome behemoth. That, my dear Leah, is your ticket out of here. I grinned, and then a blinding flash of light washed over us. I felt an invisible force slam into me, throwing me to the ground. I groaned and looked up. Two figures stood between Leah and the drifter. They were tall and gaunt, their faces obscured by shadows. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light. She is ours, one of them hissed, their voice like nails on a chalkboard. The prophecy must be fulfilled. Leah stepped back, her eyes wide with fear. What the hell is going on? Run, Leah, I shouted, scrambling to my feet. Get in the drifter. But it was too late. One of the figures lunged forward, grabbing Leah by the arm. She screamed, struggling against his grip. Then something extraordinary happened. Leah's eyes flared with a sudden, blinding light. Energy crackled around her, pushing the figure back with incredible force. The tattoos on her wrists glowed an eerie, pulsating blue. She was glowing. I guess she's not as helpless as she looks, I thought to myself. She wasn't the first nor the last to have untapped abilities. The figures hissed again, their eyes burning with fury. They raised their hands, preparing to unleash whatever dark magic they possessed. I knew I had to act fast. I pulled out my dimensional pistol, aiming it at the figures. But before I could fire, everything went black. I awoke to a throbbing headache and the familiar hum of the drifter. Leah was sitting next to me, her expression grim. What happened? I asked, struggling to sit up. They're gone, she said, for now. Who were they? What did they want? Leah shook her head. I don't know, but I have a feeling this is just the beginning. I looked at her, really looked at her. The glow was gone, but the power was still there, simmering beneath the surface. She was more than just a potential heroine. She was a target, a key, something important. And I was suddenly very, very glad that Hera had forced me to come to Havenwood. Leah, I said, taking her hand, we have a lot to talk about. But as I looked into her eyes, I realized that the journey ahead was going to be far more complicated and far more dangerous than I ever could have imagined. And I might just be falling for the woman I was supposed to deliver. This job was about to get a whole lot harder.